Welcome back, Outside the Box Familia.
Mi gente, we're ready to start our discussion. We're going to be talking about everything in Latin America, from El Salvador, the crisis in Colombia, the accident in Mexico, and much more of what's going on right here in the U.S.
But before we start, we ask that you share this broadcast so your family and friends can also tune in.
All right, let's get started with that rapid fire analysis.
Let's go. OTB fam, Colombia has been going through some very dark nights these past couple of days. It's been very, very sad and very dark. Several lives have been claimed and hundreds injured in Colombia during the protests against a tax reform right now during the pandemic. And among those dead is a 9th grader who went to protest with his brother.
Just this Sunday, the president of Colombia, Iván Duque, announced that he would withdraw the very controversial proposal and that he would put together a new plan. However, this did not calm down the public's anger. They kept on protesting. This has brought many people to condemn the violence, specifically places like the United Nations.
JP, can you tell us more about what people are demanding from the government?
Okay, well, first off, our prayers and our thoughts go to all our friends and family and our audience members who watch us from Colombia. Definitely want to pray for your safety and also for everyone affected by the violence and those that have passed away. This has been brewing for many years. This has been something that has definitely been a class sort of a warfare within Colombia. Let me be more specific. Within this last year, poverty has risen from 26% to 34%. The economy shrank by 7% last year. So this is something that they're trying to pass reforms, necessary reforms, because the country is in a large amount of debt. However, how they get there is what the current population has a problem with, as they saw the tax reform as a direct assault for the middle class and the lower class, because a lot of what these tax reforms would do would definitely affect small business owners and even put taxes on necessities for life, such as eggs and milk. So the reason people had so many problems with this and took to the streets because they vehemently did not agree with this legislation. Now, as far as the violence that we've been seeing, as Wadi mentioned, human rights organizations at this very moment are appalled because we're seeing the use of violence against protesters. For one example, a young 17-year-old kicked the police officer, and as he ran away, the police officer shot him to death. That is a very sad scene to see. It is something that no one should be okay with, no matter where you come from. And what we're also seeing on the streets right now is these protesters are no longer just the people that vehemently were opposed to the legislation. Now we're seeing people that are joining guerrilla operatives, other people that are vehemently opposed to this government coming together. And one of my sources in Colombia did tell me and sent me a voice note before we went live today that the police officers are paying people with very low resources, very low income areas to actually commit violent instances or violent forced attacks on police officers, so they then can respond. Whether that's actually credible or justified, we'll have to wait and see. But very, very messages of disappointment from many people in Colombia.
SOS Colombia. Wadi, what have been some reactions around the globe?
We have been seeing very sharp and direct criticism to the administration of Duque and to the police in Colombia. You have seen everything from statements from the U.S., from the United Nations, really detailing how they're seeing the human rights violations here, not only because of the deaths, the injuries, and the missing individuals, but also because of the lack of freedom to protest. These individuals have the right to be able to go out and express their either anger or their discouragement on this legislation, and that shouldn't have to result in these individuals being met with force from police officers. I mean, the numbers are really shocking. We're seeing dozens of people who have been killed. We have seen nearly 100 people missing. So I think we're going to continue to see countries across the globe stand up and really call out the Duque administration. One that, in my opinion, hasn't really been criticized in the global stage previously. I think the best steps are going to be for the Duque administration and the police to take steps back as people continue to criticize what they have been doing.
Thank you, Wadi. And we've seen a lot of noise also on social media from a lot of, the people from Colombia commenting on J Balvin, Sofia Vergara, Shakira's Instagram, like SOS Colombia, put the message out there. And J Balvin has been posting a lot of those violent videos, a lot of those sensitive videos on his page. And he also tweeted to CNN like, hey, this is what's going on in my country right now. Please put it out there. Spread the word, spread the awareness of what's happening in Colombia, this crisis right now. And him, Maluma, Mi Amiga Colombia, Juanes, Shakira, and even people who aren't from Colombia. Justin Bieber just posted on Instagram and tweeted about it, saying, hey, I don't know what really is going down in Colombia. I don't know the full details, but I know that this country needs prayer right now because it's really suffering. So a lot, going on in Colombia, and we send them lots of love. Our thoughts are with them, and we hope this can come to a resolution soon. We're going to move on to our next topic, chicos.
Yeah, and that next topic, Claudia, is actually still in Latin America with all eyes on El Salvador. They have a new legislative assembly. There's a new majority there, and that majority is actually coincides with the president's party, El Presidente Bukele, which we know is very popular. But they have taken steps to remove some of the top judges who were from the opposing party from the Supreme Court, and all eyes are really turning to what's happening right now.
And this move drew concern because Bukele now has full control of Congress and the high courts, and many consider this to be a violation of the Constitution and an assault on democracy.
The United States was among one of the countries that addressed the situation. Vice President Kamala Harris tweeted out, we have deep concerns about El Salvador's democracy and that an independent judiciary is critical to a healthy democracy and to a strong economy.
Wadi, what consequences do you think El Salvador will face with countries like the U.S.?
Historically, El Salvador has shared what I believe is a healthy relationship with the U.S. And with the U.S. being such a powerful nation and such a close-by neighbor, the U.S. has a long list of things that they could take actions on. Some of the most immediate things are possible sanctions, not allowing either Salvadorian diplomats or even the president to either use any kind of U.S. banks or have any kind of economic development with U.S. allies or the U.S. Something that I think would be a hit to the country. But I think one of the bigger things would be if the U.S., if the administration of Biden decides to put a temporary halt on money from family members that live in the U.S., Salvadorians who live in the U.S., that send money back home. If I'm not mistaken, approximately 40% of the Salvadorian economy depends on those U.S. dollars coming from family members here in the States. But the U.S. is also an economic partner when it comes to El Salvador. A lot of trade happens between both countries, and El Salvador, I think, would be the one most hurt there. So I think they're going to have to take steps and take in consideration the consequences that the U.S. could bring if they move forward.
Thank you, Wadi. JP, President Bukele's approval rating is so high. I mean, the people love this guy in El Salvador, across the globe. What are your thoughts on what's happening?
So last episode, we talked about Biden's first 100 days. This president has definitely had more than 100 days of popularity within El Salvador because of all the changes that he's brought to the country. And basically his core message, what you have is a young 37-year-old politician who has connected with millions of people within his country. And that's why so many people view him in a favorable light. And it hasn't declined substantially like here in the US. After the first 100 days, as we discussed, the president's popularity goes down, and it goes down drastically. Here we're seeing actually the opposite. So one of the biggest criticisms against this president, and why I think his followers have given him kind of some some slack, right, is because within the first 2 years, he did not have a majority within the Congress to make regulations. And so much of the judiciary had rulings that went against some of the key pieces of legislation that he was trying to pass. Now, the court that is currently affected, and the story that we're talking about, is 5 Supreme Court justices. Now, their government is different. Their judiciary is different. So this is a division of their Supreme Court. Why people are all up in arms about it and why people think this is weird is because it takes away with some of the checks and balances that are so important within government. Of course, here we have the Supreme Court, we have Congress and the president, and the branches of government have to work together to bring about change and legislation with this country. They cannot act uniformly, or they shouldn't, right? To make changes within our country. And same thing here. Why does the U.S. have such a big interest in this? Well, it comes down to so many factors, as Wadi brought up, big one being the economy, but also, too, it has so many undertones with what they're trying to do with immigration right now. Let's not forget that one of the biggest controversies that this administration within the U.S. had within its first 100 days was what happened at the border with undocumented children filing asylum claims at the border and those high numbers rising. That has a lot to do with years of ineffective policy with minors and immigration policy within not only El Salvador, but other Central American countries. So yes, we have to view El Salvador as an ally. And I think why the U.S. is up in arms it because this gives Bukele a lot of power to dictate not only what he does within his own country, but also to have so much support. That's a very scary thing for a country that usually the U.S. likes to control the situation.
You know, and JP, if I can add one thing, I 100% agree on the immigration side. That has been front and center during the administration of Joe Biden. Another key component that I think it's interesting, reports last year really showed that China has taken a special interest in El Salvador. They have been trying to position themselves as economic partners. That is very much a threat to the U.S. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal have been covering how the U.S. has been keeping a close eye on this relationship. As China tries to position themselves as a global leader, trying to partner with countries in the backyard of the United States would be a significant move. I think this explains, or might explain, one of the reasons why the U.S. is so vocal against what's happening now. It's giving them an opportunity to speak out against it. Because in reality, the U.S. is speaking out now, but this has happened in other countries, like Honduras, for example, where the U.S. actually remained quiet.
Thank you, Wadi, for your opinion. That is so true. For so many years, I feel like the U.S. has remained too quiet and placed the blame on other countries when it really is a bilateral type of a relationship, and it should be uniform in that situation. But moving on to another topic, here today in Mexico, we saw a very, very big tragedy happen with a train that collapsed. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador promised that an investigation surrounding the metro overpass collapse will be transparent, and those that were responsible for this collapse will be punished.
The accident claimed the lives of over 24 people and left dozens more injured. And the crash raised questions about the safety of one of the world's busiest metro systems. Wadi, what do you think the government response should be to this tragedy?
Well, I think their response is going to be judged in 2 key areas. One, their immediate response. I'm talking about providing the needed support for individuals who are hurt, addressing the families who had family members and friends who were killed in this accident. The immediate response and the safety of the rest of the rail system across the country. Mexico City has a large population that depends on public transportation. But secondly, I think the main way that they're going to be judged is really on their investigation into how this accident happened. Where was the failure? Where was the infrastructure failure? Where was the permit that wasn't either pulled or that was done incorrectly? Who were the people in charge of overseeing the correct building of this infrastructure? There's going to be a need for transparency in this process, in my opinion. If not, we're going to see the people of Mexico City really come out angry because, again, such a large number of people really depend on this public transportation.
Really a tragic and sad day for Mexico City. My heart goes out to them. It's been a really dark day. And I want to talk about Mexico's Foreign Relations Secretary, Marcelo Ebrard, because he is facing some heat after what happened in Mexico City, because he was the mayor of when the construction of that metro rail happened. JP, what are your thoughts about this?
He's definitely in the hot seat. He definitely has to answer the questions that are being made during the situation. As you heard earlier, the president is committed to showing transparency, so this doesn't definitely turn into a snowball effect in the sense of the outcry and people definitely voicing their discontent with the way the government handles situations such as this. So we hope to see that the government does the right thing. We hope to see that he answers all the questions to this investigation. And we hope that it wasn't just because they rushed to make this railroad or make this train function without taking all the safety precautions.
Thank you, JP. Yeah, our thoughts and prayers are with Mexico City, all the victims and all of their families. We're going to move on to our next topic, and we are going to be talking about what's going down in Puerto Rico. 2 women were violently killed by their partners. Very tragic, very sad, awful, makes sick. And this has sparked a lot of outrage on the island.
The body of 27-year-old Keisha Rodriguez was found in a lagoon. Rodriguez, who was pregnant, was beaten, had a substance injected in her body, and was shot as she was thrown in the lagoon. Pro boxer Felix Verdejo surrendered to the authorities and could face the death penalty if found guilty.
Yeah, JP. And the other victim, Andrea Costa, who was 35 years old, was found burned. She filed a complaint against her ex-boyfriend a few weeks ago, but it was dismissed, and the boyfriend never received a restraining order. He was then arrested and now faces charges for this crime.
People have taken to the streets following these horrific events, and with the hashtag Ni Una Más is trending on Twitter right now. JP, in Andrea's case, people are expressing outrage against the authorities because they didn't protect her, and they are demanding at the hearings that there's some change there.
Absolutely. You're seeing so much outrage, warranted outrage, because this situation calls for it. And for so many times in our Latin countries, Latino countries, we see situations happen like this, and we don't call them out. We don't bring them out to the forefront. They're tired of the political games, 1, and 2, also with the way this complaint was filed. They're not happy with the way in which the rights of women are not being respected. They're not being honored. And it's bringing to the forefront because in this situation, and then in the other case that we're going to talk about, but in this specific situation, you have a beloved former Olympian from Puerto Rico who is the culprit of this horrendous act. So there's so many nuances that involve. And yeah, just because the person involved used to be loved doesn't mean that the action that was taken is any much better. Horrendous, sad to see. Hopefully Puerto Rico brings this to whatever we can call close to justice for this person that deceased and also her family.
Wadi?
Yeah, very true,
thoughts?
JP. Yeah, very true. One thing that I'm seeing is, aside from people calling for reforms when it comes to the legal process, people are really calling out the community, right? They're calling on men, right? There's this culture of machismo, not only seen in Puerto Rico, but obviously very much highlighted right now in the island. But they're calling on men to take a step back and to really realize the culture that many of them have allowed to be in place, where some men have felt that they, either have some type of authority or some type of dominance over it. What I think is positive, some of the reports that I've seen is, there's really a unity behind this. It's not only women calling out men, it's men also standing with women against that bad culture. So I think in the next few weeks, it's going to be very key for there to be a movement, not only around legal reform, but also around the culture that some people have embraced across the island.
Thank you, Wadi, for bringing that up. I think that's very true. That machismo culture needs to be undone. It needs to be unpacked and put away somewhere else. We don't need to see that anymore. It's really tragic that these 2 women died at the hands of men that they loved, men that were supposed to protect them. We're mourning 2 girls. We're mourning a little angel that should have been born because these 2 men had so much hatred in their heart, or I really don't know what was going on in their mind, but this is just, it's a story that makes me really sad. And I'm really glad that you brought that up because we need men to be our allies and to not think we're silly, like when we're when we don't want to get on an elevator because, you know, we're scared of just being the only woman in there, and you know, like, those aren't like silly things. That's just like, we want to protect ourselves. Like, we're walking down the street and you know, we don't make eye contact. Don't tell us to smile because we have to, because we don't owe men nothing. We really don't. We just want to be equal. We just want to be left alone sometimes on the street, and we just want to be protected by those who were put in, who were supposed to protect us, like the government and those people that we're in love with. So this is a really tragic story. It really breaks my heart. And ni una más, por favor. Let's move on, chicos. Let's move on to our quick takes.
Yes.
All right. A principal in Florida was caught on tape. She was disciplining, according to her, disciplining a 6-year-old by hitting her with a wooden paddle. JP, what's your quick take?
Okay, so I know everybody's wondering right now, well, why was the mom just recording and she didn't do anything? Well, it has been reported that the mother who was filming was undocumented and didn't want to put her own safety into jeopardy. And for those who understand immigration policy, there are many reasons why she wouldn't want to come forward with it. However, my immediate reaction to this is absolutely wrong, because I don't think a teacher should be disciplining anybody that's not their own child, and definitely in front of others. I mean, like, to do it publicly, to do it to know that there were other parents in the room as well, it's absolutely appalling. And no matter where you land on this, I don't think you want anyone touching your child without their permission.
Definitely not. This was a principal. Wadi, what's your quick take?
Yeah, 100%. One thing that's interesting is reports show that although Florida is a state that actually allows what I believe is called corporal punishment, where essentially a principal or a teacher is allowed to punish the student, that specific county in Florida does not, which means that this teacher, beyond what we, I think, all agree here, crossed an ethical line. It seems that she also crossed a legal line, and there's an investigation, I believe, from the state's attorney. The family has hired a lawyer. I mean, it's a real difficult situation. I'm someone who believes in that. I mean, kids should receive some kind of punishment, and many times spanking is warranted, but not from a teacher. I think that's the role of a parent. So in this situation, the teacher really crossed the line.
Yeah, honestly, and what nerve of that teacher to hit a child in front of their mother. I mean, this story is pretty awful to me. It's horrible. And also, it's very traumatizing for that 6-year-old. I watched this video and I heard her scream. I heard her cry. I heard her, you know, she was like hyperventilating. Like, why would you do that to a 6-year-old in front of other people? Really, really sad. Let's move on, guys, to another quick take. Unless you have something to add, but if not, we're gonna move on, because A-Rod.
I'll be real. Like, it's traumatic. I'm gonna be honest. It's super traumatic when a teacher does you in any sort of way. One of my teachers in 2nd grade grabbed my arm really hard, and I've never forgotten to this day. She was an older lady, but I'll tell you this: it stays with you. So, could I only imagine what that child is gonna go through traumatically in the future? Definitely not okay.
Totally not. But yeah, let's move on to our second quick take. A-Rod is buying an NBA team fresh from his breakup with J-Lo. You know, he needs some retail therapy. Why not buy an NBA team?
That's a great way to put it, Claudia. I never thought about it that way. The way I thought about it is really A-Rod, to me, apart from being a great ball player, from the beginning has been a very savvy business person. He's someone who you've probably seen on the show Shark Tank, going toe-to-toe with Mark Cuban, Mr. Wonderful, and Damon John. He's had A-Rod Corp, which is his investment group. So, I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. When it comes to being part of the NBA, I think this is a good step for his portfolio. Again, not just a business savvy guy, but he knows sports. And I think he's going to be able to build that franchise and be a key member of that ownership group.
JP, what's your quick take?
Big ups, very smart move. The NBA is an elite ownership group. You cannot buy an NBA franchise unless you pass so much vetting. They do not let you own just any franchise. And the Minnesota Timberwolves is a 90s NBA expansion team, but since then has had some many memorable moments as a franchise. So this isn't just a small franchise. This is an actual reputable franchise. Kevin Garnett, Sam Cassell, Latrell Sprewell. Many memories for sports fans that know this team and know the history of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they have a very young core right now. As far as A-Rod, Definitely. Wadi said it. He is such a savvy businessman, aligns himself. If you're watching this show right now, mentors are everything. So outside of what Wadi just said, one of his close friends is also Warren Buffett. Big ups to A-Rod for seeking the knowledge after being a ball player. He had so much when he retired. This is him actually saying, you know what? I actually believed in myself more than just limiting myself to the box that people place me in. He thought outside the box, and now he owns an NBA team to add to his very, very reputable resume.
And speaking of A-Rod, well, on the topic of A-Rod, let's talk about his ex, J-Lo. Jennifer Lopez was spotted out with Ben Affleck, her ex-boyfriend from about 10 years ago. Bennifer, is it back on? Guys, what do you think?
Look, I thought A-Rod and J-Lo were going to ride off into the sunset. And I was kind of hoping. So I thought J-Lo had found it. Look, I don't wish any type of situation on anybody. I want people definitely to be happy. Let's not forget that Ben Affleck and J-Lo, when they were dating, caused so much controversy over a movie they made called Geely. Geely had a $75 million production budget. And how much did it sell at the box office? 7 million. Many people didn't agree with Ben Affleck and J-Lo at the same time. They also did music videos together. Whether or not they get back together, remember, Ben Affleck also had to reconstruct his career after those failed movies and did come back and made a big comeback with Academy Awards. So we'll see what happens with these two. But at the same time, who knows?
Wadi, what do you think about Bennifer?
Look, Claudia, a lot of my job is to analyze the news, predict what's going to happen. But I'm going to tell you, there are two people that I have given up trying to analyze and predict their next move. One of those people is Donald Trump, and the second is Jennifer Lopez when it comes to her relationships. I, similar to JP, thought her and A-Rod looked like a great couple. I thought they were in it for the long run. That would have been my prediction. But at this point, I'm not trying to predict anything else that Donald Trump did in the past or will do in the future. And I'm not going to do the same when it comes to J-Lo. I'm not able to give you a quick take on this one.
That's so funny because back in the early 2010s, Bennifer was it for me. I loved J-Lo with Ben Affleck. I thought they were going to get married. They're going to be the whole deal. I loved them on that yacht, on that Jenny from the Block video. They were literally everything. And, you know, I would like to leave that there. J-Lo still looks amazing. Ben Affleck doesn't look like what he did 10 years ago. He didn't have a glow up. He didn't have that J-Lo glow. Every time I see a picture of him, he's got a little beer belly. He smokes. I don't know if he's taking care of himself, but I don't know. Maybe J-Lo will take care of him. But again, like you, I don't really know what's going to happen in J-Lo's love life. But let's move on to another couple who shocked the entire world. Bill and Melinda Gates are getting a divorce after 27 years together. JP, what's your quick take?
It's sad to see. Melinda Gates is huge on community engagement, huge on giving back. Their foundation gives hundreds of millions of dollars to so many needed organizations all over the world. One of those being one of the important avenues that they've definitely donated to is to the immigrant rights movement, and have donated to so many organizations that have been able to grow because of their donations. It's sad to see. Who knows what happened, but I can tell you this, those two together effectuated a lot of change with the funds, the billions of dollars that they do have within our local communities.
Wadi, what's your quick take on the separation of Bill and Melinda Gates?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to point to multiple power couples on the global stage. Usually it's either just, you know, the husband or the wife separately. But Bill and Melinda are genuinely what I believe a global power couple with their work across the continent of Africa, their work in trying to fight diseases, their work trying to better the U.S. education system, their research and investment when it comes to innovation, technology, and in the healthcare space. I mean, their impact is seen, it's felt. They work on various topics. I mean, they are genuinely that global power couple, but I am curious to see, although they make it a promise in their statement, they will continue to work together on their foundation. I'm curious to see if their impact remains the same. Hopefully, it does.
Yeah, I'm also curious to see who Bill Gates will date next. Who's going to slide in that DM, that Bill Gates DM? OTV fam, leave us your comments about the show. Who do you think Bill Gates will date next? We just love to hear from you. Hit us up in the comments.
Absolutely. And, we want to hear from you. So if you're watching on Facebook right now, make sure to leave your comments. You can find our handles on our Instagram page at OTB Show. We'd love to connect with you, the host of OTB as well.
Yeah,
And
slide
don't
into our
forget,
DMs.
100%. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube to stay up to date with the program, with the episodes, and all our quick takes that you'll see in the clips. So subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Take care, OTB fam. We'll see you next week.
Next week.